Hi, I'm Emily Benson here for workshop number 1 of the Rising Career Masterclass. We have 3 parts to this series of workshops, and then a bonus workshop too. So I have a ton of content I've laid all out for you, and I'm really excited to share it with you because, I spent way too long in my own life stuck in work that wasn't feeling quite right, that wasn't feeling meaningful, that wasn't giving me the salary that I wanted. And I don't want more women to stay in that place. And I've really, worked hard to uncover a process of change that really works. So if you're in a place where you're feeling stuck in your career, like you don't really have control over it, like you aren't sure what's even next and how to kind of, make this work, this is the series of workshops for you, because I'm going to really lay out exactly how to go through a career change process, whether it's a promotion, whether it's a whole new industry, whether it's a new career. This is still a process that's going to work for you. One thing that I'm going to talk a lot about today is the uncovering sort of why you're actually at this point where you're wanting a change. Because if we don't really kind of pinpoint why, then it's much harder to see the way forward. So that's what we're going to work on today, is really kind of pinpointing why you're feeling stuck. And I'm going to show you kind of the bigger picture and some things you probably haven't thought of. And so we're going to pinpoint sort of why your career isn't working, why you're feeling frustrated and like you don't have quite the control that you're wanting. And then we're going to talk about the steps you need to take to pivot your career in the direction that you want to go. So I'm really excited to share this information with you. Some of it I haven't even shared with my clients yet, really explicitly in this way. So I think you're going to enjoy it. Let's switch over to the slides. Okay. All right, so a little bit about me. I'm an academic and a career coach and a mom, of course. I've been coaching for almost 8 years, but I've actually been studying careers for much longer than that. After college, I began a career in human resources, recruiting new employees into the high-tech industry. So I got really interested during that time period in, how people chose particular careers and what employers are really looking for. And when I started my academic work, I dove into studying career patterns of young professionals and women. In my first years of being a career coach, I worked primarily with entry-level employees, college seniors and recent graduates. And after a few years, I realized I was doing a lot of work helping my friends who were in similar places as me, mid-career, fairly successful, but wanting to make some changes, right? And I was making a bunch of changes as well, expanding my coaching business and pivoting it. So I began working with professional women about 14 months ago or so, and it's been really an amazing shift for me. I've learned a ton about what works and what doesn't. So I want to, share that with you, of course. All right, so let's talk about where you are right now. There's a reason why you signed up for this workshop, right? You're craving some kind of career change. Are you feeling stuck, frustrated in your career in some way? Maybe even feeling some shame that, you haven't been able to build your career to the point where you thought it would be by now. And maybe you're just really unsure of what you want to do next. So, it's funny, I was talking to a potential client on the phone the other day, and she described it as, wanting to pull the curtain back. Like there's something just around the corner and she can't see it, right? And I've sort of heard that sentiment a number of times, that how can I pull that curtain back? So, we're going to kind of dig into that today. Unfortunately, one of the most common ways we try to figure out what our next career step might be very rarely works. And I've actually found it to be quite counterproductive for most of us in that it actually causes harm to our change process. So I want to talk about that because so many of us are doing it so often. And it's not our fault. We're kind of told that this is the way to do it. So I want to dig into that here. So I think it's really, really common when we're unhappy with our work is to jump onto job boards, right? Indeed, LinkedIn, and start scrolling through job descriptions, looking for anything that sounds enticing, right? So, and maybe you find something that looks really good and you apply for it and you don't hear anything back. Has this ever happened to you? It can be pretty demoralizing. Maybe you're just spending kind of time daydreaming, thinking about it, but you don't really understand what these jobs are. None of them sound quite right. And you get kind of frustrated and, resolve to just suck it up in your current job. Maybe you actually get an interview and then you don't get the job, right? So all of these are pretty demoralizing, right? Looking and not seeing anything, not hearing back, not getting a job that we worked pretty hard for in an interview process. And I found that, a lot of women come to me after they've been doing this for a long time, and they're quite, their confidence is quite low from, being on this cycle for a long time. And the reality is that very few people find their jobs only through job boards. So unless there's a component of knowing someone in the organization as well, applying for jobs online just really very rarely works. And it really is a trap. And, we feel like we're being productive by applying for jobs, but really there's work that we could be doing that would be much more productive and doesn't cause that demoralizing rejection. So, if you've been doing this, let's just put that aside for now. See if you can kind of not do that for the next week or so, and know that most people who are, exploring job boards like that are going through the exact same thing that you have. It just doesn't work for most people. All right, so I want to back up here a little bit and talk about traditional understandings of career. Donald Super was a really amazing career theorist that helped us so much in the career field to understand, how to analyze careers. But he was working quite a few years ago, so his, visual of life development here, this exploration mode, entry level, going into establishment, working hard to establish yourself, and then maintaining your career, and then finally decline, which is a pretty depressing term here. It's a pretty, it's a very linear process, and I think a lot of us have this in our head still, that this is the right way to do a career, right? The right way to live. We have so many other metaphors, right? We're climbing a career ladder, we're working our way up, we get to the pinnacle, and then we retire. And I think this image has a real hold on us in our society, this traditional linear process of career. But what I've found through my research and my coaching is that this model doesn't hold up anymore, and in particular, it doesn't apply to women. So I want to talk about my career theory for powerful women here. So we start off, investing a lot of money in our education and go into an entry-level job. And sometimes that is, chosen very carefully. Many of us just fall into something because, that's kind of what was in demand at the time. That's true for me. It was very easy to get a job in the high-tech industry at the time when I graduated from college, and I sort of fell into human resources. Other people choose much more carefully than I did. And, we work our way up into, mid-senior levels, kind of following this linear process, doing what other people told us, following sort of the expectations, particularly women. I think, we are sort of taught to, we're taught to follow the program, and we are often told to ignore our intuitions, which, causes us to end up sometimes in career paths that aren't quite right for us. And we eventually hit a wall. I've also found that, even if women feel very, if they love their careers, if they feel really confident and they are really enjoying all of this work, they still often hit a wall, right? That linear process of just moving up just doesn't quite work with the way our economic model is right now. And also for women too, because of the way that we are compromised in the workplace, right? The workplace was designed for men, and the expectations of how you will develop your career worked well for men for many decades. They just don't work the same way for women. And we maybe hit a glass ceiling and need to move into a leadership role of some sort, but we aren't getting the opportunity to do that. There's just something missing here. I've hit a crisis point. And that could be, bigger, kind of a midlife type crisis, something a little bigger, or it could just be a really, little niggling feeling of there has to be something more. This process isn't working for me. These expectations aren't working for me anymore. So we come to this point where we want to pivot, all right, a change moment. And on the other side of that is sort of a question mark, but I think for sure it's got to include more leadership potential, more impact, more meaning. And for a lot of women, there's an entrepreneurship component to it, starting your own business or some sort of side hustle. And and then of course we don't decline, as Super tells us. We're too enlightened for that, So I apologize for the cultural appropriation here, but tribal elder sort of works, right? We've developed wisdom over our lives, and we want to continue to give that back to the world in our later years. So your first worksheet there is all about helping you to brainstorm, figuring out what that crisis point is. If you're in the thick of it, is it dealing with leadership that's making it impossible for you to move up? Is it coworkers that are really unhelpful and making you unhappy? Or maybe your geographic location isn't working anymore. Maybe your industry really isn't inspiring. You want to move into a nonprofit or something more mission driven. And until we know what is going on there, we can't really move out of this pattern that we're in, right? Maybe it's just particular tasks that you need to bring, that you need to pass on to someone else. You used to enjoy them, but they're sort of sucking the life out of you right now. And honestly, if you are holding on to those tasks that you don't enjoy, that aren't really playing to your strengths anymore, if you're holding on to those, you're actually holding someone else back that wants to do those tasks and could learn from them, right? And could grow their career by doing those tasks instead of you. So here we've got to, think about this change process isn't one that's just going to benefit you. It's going to benefit other people because you're opening up more space for people who are coming up behind you. So after you've kind of listed these out in your first worksheet there, I want you to also think about ranking them because it's probably more than one thing that's really bothering you right now. So we want to kind of figure out how they're falling in order of importance. And maybe, maybe some of the things that you feel like are frustrating you are more, it's more because of one thing than the other, right? So maybe you feel like you have a toxic work environment and you hate your geographic location. But actually, if you could fix that toxic work environment and get into something better, you would be okay with your geographic location and wouldn't be craving, moving to Tahiti anymore. So often we don't have to throw everything away. But once we, start to uncover it, then you can pinpoint pinpoint more exactly what it is you actually want. So I want you to take some time to work through that workshop, either pausing the video now or coming back to it afterwards. So I've talked about this motto with my clients, and in a leadership workshop I did recently, it was really resonating with a lot of us to think about our lives this way. But afterwards, I realized I had forgotten to put in a crucial component here, the healing component. I use it in my coaching, but I never quite made it so explicit and built it into the model in this way. I found with working with my clients and reflecting on my own life that we often, in our early career or even at the mid-senior level, somewhere in there, there's been some trauma, right? Huge stress, burnout, being laid off, downsized. Maybe you had a really toxic boss or coworker that really shook your confidence for a while. Maybe you saw others being mistreated. Maybe you were really dealing with microaggressions. So you have to heal from that, which is, I'm going to show you how to do that in workshop 2. We're never going to completely heal ourselves and be perfect, but addressing those traumas, recognizing them, working with them as important components of who we are is critical for being able to move through the crisis point and into the pivot. So again, next workshop, we're really going to dig into that healing process. Unfortunately, I will tell you it's not linear, and often you're kind of pivoting a little bit, doing some healing. Maybe you're feeling a little crisis again, and you've got to heal more. There's often a lot of layers to work through, and we learn something new with every little pivot. And some of what we learn is, I have to go back and do a little bit more healing and work on myself a little bit deeper. Sometimes we think we have it figured out, but we didn't quite have it yet. So anyway, so that's sort of, what this looks like. And, I will tell you that even getting to that leadership point, the point where you're really making an impact and really finding a lot of meaning in your work, doesn't mean you're done with healing. But it doesn't mean you're doing it wrong either. This isn't a linear process. So I want you to take that second worksheet that has this diagram on it and think about where you are on it. Are you at that mid-senior level? Have you hit the crisis point? Have you done some healing? Maybe you've started to pivot. Where are you, right? So I want you to kind of map out your career and think about how it fits into this trajectory. So I hope that this has really helped you to understand why change is difficult, why a career move later in life is difficult. Many women call me because they maybe just want a new resume or they want help with LinkedIn. And quickly we realize, it's going to be a little more complicated than that, right? It takes a little more work than, a simple job change, because we're really taking on a new identity here. Right? When we're going from a mid-senior level to really moving into a leadership role or moving into a whole different industry, something where we can make a bigger impact, there's more to it. And there's a little bit more getting out of your comfort zone and taking some risks than we want to sign up for sometimes. But it's very possible. It's very doable. It just requires really making a commitment. I know you're not afraid of work. You've gotten this far in your career. So I'm going to make it really easy for you to know exactly what to do. And if you can start off by just committing to this 3-part workshop, you're going to be so much closer to that pivot that you're craving, right? Today, you should have gotten some clarity about why you're feeling that need to shift, and hopefully found some real comfort in knowing that you're not alone. In fact, a lot of us have gone before you and we've figured out what works and what doesn't, and I'm going to lay it all out for you. So in your third worksheet, I want you to make that commitment to yourself and to your family to follow through with this workshop that I'm offering you for free. I put a lot of work into it and it's going to be so worth it for you, I promise. I do want to warn you that often little things happen when we try to make change because our egos don't like it. So sometimes we sort of self-sabotage, or it seems like the universe is kind of trying to sabotage us. My clients and I will tell you that this happens over and over. Once we make the commitment to change, we get really sick, or our kids get sick, or something happens, and it feels like it's a sign that you're not supposed to be doing this. And I just want you to get ready for that. Expect it. It happens to all of us. And yeah, recreating, getting rid of old patterns is kind of hard work. And sometimes we'll feel like some bumps along the road. But I want you to hold on through those first few bumps, right? It gets a lot smoother. I promise you that. So, add on to your commitment in that third worksheet that, recognize that some sabotages might come up. See if you can write down what they might be. Time's a big one. Like a big project comes up at work and, oh my gosh, now I don't have time to watch these videos, or someone gets sick, or some sort of emergency, minor emergency happens. So just, think about that ahead of time. And as you're going through the next week, notice if any sabotages happen. All right. So workshop number 2 is coming on Thursday, right to your inbox. And, I brought up that healing is such a critical part of this process, but how do you even do that, right? And I'm going to tell you, it's not about, bubble baths and yoga and meditation, although some of that can help. I have a slightly different process that I've worked with on my clients and on myself. And it's a model that really pulls together a few different lines of thinking. So I'm really excited to share that for you and make it really clear, how to do this healing work. Okay? Once again, I will ask you to share the love if you don't mind. There's a button below the worksheets about sharing on Facebook, or you can just send people to my website, EmilyBensonPhD.com. They can sign up for this workshop here, right there on my website. So please share the love. Lots of women can benefit from this, and I want to get it out to all of you. All right, take care. I'll see you on Thursday.